Hello listeners. This is the reading of the Sabbath School lesson for the fourth and final quarter of 2022.
The series is titled On Death, Dying and the Future Hope. The author is Dr. Alberto Tim, while your readers are Percy and Sibylla Harrold. Welcome to lesson number 7, titled Christ's Victory Over Death. It's ready for teaching on November 12, and I'm Percy Harrold. Sunday, November 6, A Sealed Tomb. Christ's mission seemed to have ended and even failed with his death on the cross. Satan succeeded in instigating Judas to betray the Saviour in Luke 22, verses 3 and 4, which we'll read now. Then Satan entered Judas, surnamed Iscariot, who was numbered among the 12. So he went his way and conferred with the chief priests and captains how he might betray him to them. And it's also recorded in John 13, beginning at verse 26. Jesus answered, "It is he to whom I shall give a piece of bread when I have dipped it." And having dipped the bread, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. Now after the piece of bread, Satan entered him. Then Jesus said to him, "What you do quickly." And we read the chief priests and elders demanded his death in Matthew 26:59. Now the chief priests, the elders, and all the council sought false testimony against Jesus to put him to death. And Matthew 27:20. But the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitudes that they should ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. After Jesus was arrested, all the disciples forsook him and fled, we read in Matthew 26:56. And Peter denied him 3 times, as we read in Matthew 26:69-75. Now Peter sat outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him, saying, "You also were with Jesus of Galilee." But he denied it before them all, saying, "I do not know what you are saying." And when he had gone out to the gateway, another girl saw him and said to those who were there, "This fellow also was with Jesus of Nazareth." But again he denied with an oath, "I do not know the man." And a little later, those who stood by came up and said to Peter, "Surely you also are one of them, for your speech betrays you." Then he began to curse and swear, saying, "I do not know the man." Immediately a rooster crowed, and Peter remembered the word of Jesus, who had said to him, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." So he went out and wept bitterly. Now Jesus was lying in a tomb hewed out of a rock, closed with a large and sealed stone, protected by Roman guards, and watched by invisible demonic powers. If we read Matthew 27, verses 57-66, "Now, when evening had come, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who himself had also become a disciple of Jesus. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate commanded the body to be given to him. When Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his new tomb, which he had hewn out of the rock. And he rolled a large stone against the door of the tomb and departed. And Mary Magdalene was there, and the other Mary sitting opposite the tomb. On the next day, which followed the day of preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees gathered together to Pilate, saying, "Sir, we remember, while he was still alive, how that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise.' Therefore command that the tomb be made secure until the 3rd day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away, and say to the people, 'He has risen from the dead.' So the last deception will be worse than the first." Pilate said to them, "You have a guard. Go your way, make it as secure as you know how." So they went and made the tomb secure, sealing the stone and setting the guard. Ellen White wrote in Manuscript Releases, Volume 12, page 412, "If he could, he," that's Satan, "would have held Christ locked in the tomb." End of quote. During his earthly ministry, Christ had foretold not only his death on the cross, but also his resurrection. Using the Eastern inclusive language, in which a fraction of a day stands for a whole day, Jesus mentioned that as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. And that's recorded in Matthew 12, verses 39 and 40. On other occasions, Jesus underscored that he would be killed, but on the third day he would rise again. We read about that in Matthew 16:21. From that time Jesus began to show to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and be raised the third day. And Matthew 17, verses 22 and 23. Now while they were staying in Galilee, Jesus said to them, "The Son of Man is about to be betrayed into the hands of men, and they will kill him. And the third day he will be raised up." And they were exceedingly sorrowful. And Matthew 20, verses 17 to 19. Now Jesus, going up to Jerusalem, took the 12 disciples aside on the road and said to them, "Behold, we are going to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and to the scribes, and they will condemn him to death, and deliver him to the Gentiles to mock and to scourge and to crucify. And the third day he will rise again." The chief priests and the Pharisees were aware of those statements and took measures that they hoped would prevent his resurrection. Read Matthew 27, 62 to 66. How did these actions only help provide the world later with more evidence for the resurrection of Jesus? Matthew 27, beginning at verse 62. On the next day, which followed the day of preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees gathered together to Pilate, saying, "Sir, we remember while he was still alive how that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise.' Therefore command that the tomb be made secure until the third day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away, and say to the people, 'He has risen from the dead.' So the last deception will be worse than the first." Pilate said to them, "You have a guard. Go your way. Make it as secure as you know how." So they went and made the tomb secure, sealing the stone and setting the guard. All security measures taken to keep Jesus locked in the tomb only made his victory over death and the hosts of evil even more noticeable because of all the precautions and measures that his enemies took to try to make sure it would never happen. Also, these men surely had heard of the miracles of Jesus. They had seen some of them too, and yet they thought that a guard over the tomb could stop him, the one who was able to do so many miracles, from being resurrected. Also, they put a guard around the tomb in case of what? That the disciples might steal the body and then claim that Jesus had been resurrected from the dead? When the people would say, "Where is the risen Jesus?" they could say, "Just take our word for it." If nothing else, their actions revealed just how afraid the chief priests were of Jesus even after he died. Perhaps deep down they did fear that he just might be resurrected after all. This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful.